Let's start off our edition of Which Doesn't Belong and Why by staying in Tampa and looking at that quarterback depth chart. 3 names on it: Tom Brady, Blaine Gabbert, Kyle Trask. Which doesn't belong and why?
Well, I'm going to go with Blaine Gabbert because he's the only one on the list who was a first-round draft pick, right? So that's who I'm going to go with, and he was 13-35 in his career as a starter, Mike. 50 touchdowns, 47 interceptions. I don't know what Bruce Arians sees in Blaine Gabbert, but he hasn't shown the rest of us anything to think that he's the most underrated player in this league.
If Blaine Gabbert becomes the starter at some point and has a really good year, would you vote for him for Comeback Player of the Year? I already know the answer.
Yeah, probably not.
All right. The easy one's Brady. I mean, Brady's Brady. No one else is Brady. Brady stands out head and shoulders above all quarterbacks. And the question is, how much of his way, his approach, his work ethic, his leadership can rub off on these other guys? Maybe Blaine Gabbert just needed to spend a couple of years in the master class that Tom Brady puts on a consistent basis. Maybe he just needed to learn how to be an NFL quarterback. You know, these guys get sucked into the NFL. They get thrust into a starting job. They don't necessarily have anyone to show them what to do. That is such an underrated aspect of someone's individual NFL journey. Jameis Winston, after 1 year with Drew Brees, he could be a completely different quarterback this year. We don't know. He was so emotional when he was talking about Brees after Brees retired. We don't know how that incorporates itself into the way that a quarterback operates. So Brady is Brady. He's clearly separate from the rest. I'm curious to see how much of Brady trickles down to Gabbert and Trask and does set the stage for success in the future. All right, NFC head coaches with 1 Super Bowl title, which doesn't belong and why? Bruce Arians, Pete Carroll, Sean Payton, and obviously Mike McCarthy has a Super Bowl title, but not with the team that he's currently coaching for. Who doesn't belong and why from Arians, Carroll, and Payton?
I'm going to go with Arians because he's won the one championship he should have won as a head coach. When you look at Sean Payton and having Drew Brees all those years, and I have the record in front of me, I mean, 12 wins, 13 wins, 13 wins, 11 wins. The last 4 years, couldn't get it done, couldn't get that second championship with Drew Brees, which I just find unfathomable. And we all know that they got cheated out of that one against the Rams. They would have been back in the Super Bowl. They would have had a great chance to win that game if they had gotten back there, but they didn't. It was a bad call against them, and things have gone against them. You look at the Minnesota game when they lost that one at the end. They've just had so many bad things go against them, but they should have had more than one championship, frankly. And Pete Carroll, I mean, if not for the Malcolm Butler play, he's got 2 championships and should have 2 championships. So to me, Bruce Arians is the only one with that 1 championship who has won the one time that he should have won it. These other guys, to me, they should have more championships, Mike, than what they have.
Well, the bounty scandal screwed the Saints up for 2012 and for multiple years beyond that as they kind of rebuilt the defense after the lost season. The offense continued to be very good. And then that 17, 18, 19, 20, I tried to hold that cough off as best I could. I apologize. But those last 4 years, to have those heartbreaking exits from the postseason. So I see where you're coming from. Arians had one team that was good enough to win it, and he took that team and he won it. Although he had some good teams in Arizona, got to an NFC championship. I'll say Pete Carroll doesn't belong because, taking your point and really honing it down, Carroll's got no excuses for not having the team around Russell Wilson. And here's the other side of it. Carroll's the one of the 3 coaches who currently is in one of these messes with his quarterback. You know, Tom Brady wants to be in Tampa. Taysom Hill and Jameis Winston want to be in New Orleans. We don't know what Russell Wilson wants. We don't know how long he's going to be there. And there has been, I think, a sense that the Seahawks haven't really lived up to the excellence that we saw 2012, 13, 14, especially 13, 14, and we're getting farther and farther away from the last time the Seahawks have made it to a Super Bowl. I don't think they've been back to an NFC championship since their last Super Bowl appearance. which it's getting deeper and deeper into the rearview mirror. All right, AFC head coaches with one Super Bowl title. Andy Reid of the Chiefs, John Harbaugh of the Ravens, Mike Tomlin of the Steelers. Which doesn't belong and why?
Well, I'm going to go with Andy Reid on this one because I think he's a Hall of Fame coach, and everybody was so excited when he finally won that first championship, right? But, if he retired 5 years from now that we have the coaching category, I think he's in the Hall of Fame, and I think he's the one guy on that list. Even if you didn't have the coaching category, which just came in a couple years ago, I think he would still be a first ballot Hall of Famer. If not first ballot, maybe second, like Bill Parcells, I think went in his second time around after he unretired, came back, whatever. But I do think that Andy Reid would be a pretty automatic choice to go into the Hall of Fame, whether the coaching category was there or not, just what he's done, the wins he has. I mean, he just keeps compiling them, and I think this is a coach that's going to win more than one Super Bowl. Those other guys have won their Super Bowls. They've had some great teams around them. They're not Andy Reid. They haven't quite done what he's done yet, Mike.
He's been a head coach in the NFL every year since 1999, and I remember when the Eagles not just made Andy Reid the head coach, but basically gave him the keys to the franchise, put him in charge of the football operation. My reaction was, who the hell is Andy Reid? That was before I was in the business, but that was the widespread reaction. Nobody knew who Andy Reid was. For the most part, we found out fairly quickly. He's had great teams pretty much every year since 1999. I'll say John Harbaugh just because he's the guy who was the special teams coordinator. He had 1 year as a position coach, defensive backs coach, just as like a palate cleanser because nobody hires special teams coordinators to be head coaches. It's amazing to me that still is the case. We hear the arguments from time to time. Special teams coordinator, used to dealing with guys on both sides of the ball, the closest thing of any of the three coordinators to a head coach, because you do have to pull a team together. You don't have your little niche here, offense, defense. No, you have to know everyone. You have to work with everyone. You have to motivate everyone. And Harbaugh, despite having some offensive coordinators who weren't among the best football minds available, still contending teams, relevant teams, Super Bowl win, and in the conversation on a regular basis. So I think for that reason, Harbaugh stands out, Charean, because of that special teams background. Aren't you amazed that really hasn't caught on? Dave Tobe, the special teams coordinator in Kansas City, he kind of was on the fringes of consideration at one point, but none of these special teams guys can punch through.
It is amazing, and so many of them want to become head coaches, and they just haven't gotten that opportunity, Mike. And I thought that Harbaugh would open the door for these guys to get more of those opportunities, and it just hasn't happened.
All right, one more topic real quickly, which doesn't belong and why. Quarterbacks entering their fourth years and in line for contract extensions, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Baker Mayfield, which doesn't belong and why?
Well, I'm going to go with Lamar Jackson because he's the guy with the MVP award, right? And he's the guy that I think that the Ravens are sold on despite being ranked last in passing yards in the NFL last season. So I think he's going to get his extension. I think Josh Allen's going to get his extension. I think Baker Mayfield gets his, but I do still have a little bit of a question about Baker Mayfield. Just is he going to do what he did at the end of the season? Is he going to continue to take that next step? The Browns sound convinced that he's going to do that. I'm going to be surprised if they don't wait to make sure that that's the case, though, Mike.
You know, Andrew Berry, the GM of the team, recently with the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, talking about these issues of when do you sign the quarterback and is it a cautionary tale? What happened with Carson Wentz and Jared Goff? Sims and I talked about this yesterday. Yes, it is a cautionary tale. You better be damn sure when you make that move. If you're sure about the guy, you get him signed after 3 years. If you're not sure, you wait. To me, Mayfield stands out because the Ravens should be sure about Jackson. The Bills should be sure about Allen. Because of 2019 and because it took him a while in 2020 to really reach that high level, I'd want to give it one more year. And I know it's going to cost me if I wait, but I want to give it that one more year and see if he can play all year long like we saw him at the end of the season. And if so, he's a guy you never let go. But at the end of the day, it's all based on merit, except for the 90th spot on the Jaguars roster. And merit is what's going to deliver a contract for Baker Mayfield, because you don't want to get yourself in a position where you've forked over the huge money and you get a few years into it and you ask yourself, what the hell are we doing? Here's what we're doing. We're taking a break. When we return, the draft as promised. Julio Jones had the great catch in Super Bowl 51 that felt like the dagger and wasn't. The all-time great plays produced by the team that ultimately lost the game. We'll draft that next here on PFT Live.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.